Hi, welcome to some pincushion ideas with GourmetQuilter. I'm Susan Clare, the GourmetQuilter, and I've been doing some pincushions each day. We're doing 20 days of pincushions, so a different one each day for 20 days. And we are up to pincushion number 16, so we're doing really well. This time we're having a whole lot of fun with a little round cylinder type pincushion. There's more information available on GourmetQuilter.com. There's a pattern that you can sign up for, and then you receive a download each day, and there's the video to show you how to do it, and all the notes and things are in the pattern. So this is what we're doing this time. I've actually already made 2 of them because it was just too much fun and I got a bit carried away. So they're just a cylinder, but you know, you could have a whole lot of fun with these little cylinders because they just roll, just like a little rolling pin cushion, you know. So relatively straightforward to make. We're going to make the bits. I've cut all my bits out already. I've done just a little bit of the work. So because I'm using 2 colours, it's probably clearer on this one. I've got 2 colours, a main colour and a contrast. And then on this one I've used a 3rd colour for the ends. So that's what I'm doing again on this one. So I've got a piece of batting for the main part here. I've got a piece of braid. I've got a very decorative braid on this one, where this one's the tape measure. That was a nice decorative one as well. I've got my end colours and my main colour and my contrast colour. And the other thing we need is a couple of circles from something like some template plastic. And that's just to make the ends nice and firm. And then I've got some fibre fill and crushed walnut shell to put inside. So we'll get started. So we just need to join the rectangle of the main colour and the contrast colour together and then press that seam open. So I've already gone ahead and done that amount. And so now I want to place the batting behind it, and I always like to do that with the iron. This is actually a very lightly fusible batting, but you don't need to have a fusible batting. It can just be a lightweight batting, but this one will fuse just a little bit. So, and then what we want to do is simply put a braid over that join, so with a nice flat seam there. We will be losing a little bit of a seam here, so we might want to consider whether you want to bring it a little bit this way or whichever way. This one here was a very narrow braid, so it didn't sort of make a lot of difference. So I'm just going to stitch that on through the batting and everything as well. So I'll go ahead and get that stitched on, and whilst I'm there, then we have to sew these ends on, which makes it a longer piece that way. So I'm going to go ahead, sew the braid on, sew the ends on, then I'll come and show you what to do next. So I've gone ahead, I've stitched my braid on, stitching down either side of it, and then I've just stitched these 2 end pieces on as well. So now we want to press those so that the seam goes towards the end. It will anyway because it's got the batting in it, so it's a little bit bulkier. So now what we want to do is turn it over to the wrong side and then bring this raw edge in to meet this raw edge here. So not over it, but just want it to meet. And we want to do that on both ends because we want a nice little fold there. What we'll be doing with the fold is gathering it, so it makes this little gathered bit inside the end here. So it's nice to have a nice folded edge that we can be gathering up. The other thing we want to do whilst we're here, so we've got that edge meeting that edge, but we want to fold that over so that the batting fills it, so that on this side there's just that narrow edge, and so that's going to be this little narrow edge that's around here, so that's on the ends, and we just want to press that. We're going to open it out again, but if we press a line in it now, it hopefully will remember, so that when we turn it out and start wanting to do the stitching around, it'll be a little bit easier because there'll already be a fold line for it to remember. So that's looking pretty good. So now we want to, we should just trim off the braid so that we've got a nice straight edge there. The braid was just a touch long there. And then we're going to bring it up and make it into a little cylinder. So we've got a ends folded in here. We've got a fold line on the edge of the batting there, but what we're going to do now is bring the right sides together and join it all the way along, but we want to make sure that everything meets as well. So it's just a seam from one end to the other with those raw edges folded in like that. Nothing particularly hard about it other than just trying to make sure everything's meeting as you go, because it may show later on if it's not. So just a 1/4 inch seam all the way along. Make sure the braid's all meeting. So that's all looking pretty good. We've got this nice looking cylinder something or other going on here. And so what we want to do now is fold that down to where we had that fold line in that we pressed, still working with it inside out, and we're folding it to the wrong side. But we can check inside here that it's all sitting right. So hopefully it will remember that line where we folded it to, and it's looking like it has remembered nicely. And so what we want to do now, this seam is a little bit bulky, but if you just press it to one side and then the same side when we do the other end, we're going to be doing this same thing on both ends. And now we just want to stitch around in that ditch there, just to hold that end, because it's got that little sort of ridge sitting up there, and that's what we're creating by stitching this. So it is a little bit of a tight circle, however it does work, and I found the best way is to leave it inside out and to pop that in the machine and just swivel it round as we go. So we're just going in the little ditch right next to the dark colour there, and then you just got to keep moving it every few stitches so that you can go all the way around. So much fun making all these different things. So I'm already around, so I can end off there. And so that's all done. I now need to do exactly the same thing on this end. So I'll go ahead and get this end done, and then I'll show you what we do with it next. So I've gone ahead and I've turned it out the right way as well. And the next thing we need to do, I've also done most of, but not all of yet. We need to do a little hand gathering stitch all the way around this little folded edge. So I've gone ahead and done my stitching around that end, but you want to leave both your ends hanging, and I like to knot both my ends so that they stay separated out like that, so that we're going to be able to draw that up. But I'm still doing this end here so that you can just see what I'm doing. It's just a running stitch, just very close to this folded edge of this bit that we made that was sitting inside before. So you don't want tiny stitches, and I'm just quite close to the edge, and I'm going around the inside so that my threads will end up pretty much inside. So I just want to come out very close to that one, which will come out there. So it's just, as I said, a running stitch to be able to pull that up. And so I've got a double thread so that it's nice and strong, and I'll just knot that end so that it doesn't get to fly away and get caught up with the other one. And the other thing I like to do when I'm going to do something like this, because it all gets a little bit fiddly and you need another hand, and there isn't another hand, is I like to start tying my first knot so that when we gather it in, and I can actually continue on and gather it in now. So we want to pull that gathering up so that it sits nice and firm in the centre there. So the double thread helps, because you do want to be able to pull it up quite firmly. And then I'm just going to tie that off. Now if you want to thread your ends in, that would be another option. I'm actually not going to do that just at the moment. I'm probably just going to snip them off. And one thing you can do with little ends like that when you just tie knots is just pop a dab of glue on, and that will stop it unravelling later on. It shouldn't unravel anyway. So now we've got this nice looking cylinder with a very nice looking little end on it. And what we want to do now, before we gather up the other end, is we've got our two template plastic circles or something like that, something nice and firm. And we just want to put one right down in there, right against that gathered up end, to give it a nice firm end. It should sit pretty much exactly where we want it. It should sit just behind this seam here, so that this little bit is sitting out, and the gathered circle will sit flat against it. So it's looking pretty good actually. So now what I want to do is I want to start filling the pincushion from this open end. And so what I'm going to do is, initially I'm going to put a little bit of the fibre fill in, because that will just help it sort of pad out so that it does stay filled right out. So if I start off with some of this and push it right down in against the plastic, hopefully it will all fill out nicely. Because then I'm going to fill up the main part of the cylinder with the walnut shell. So you want to push that down as far as it'll reasonably go, while still keeping your circle in the right place. Want it wandering around the place. And now I'm going to bring the walnut shell over and fill up with that. So it'll take a bit, because we've got to fill most of the cylinder with it. So what's going to happen with the fibre fill is going to bounce back up, because that's what fibre fill does. So we'll need to push that down so that we get it nice and full, because at the moment it's kind of looking like it's full. I've got walnut shell sitting right to the top there, but there's not a lot going on down here. So we need to find something that we can push that down with, and I found that pushing, I'm not sure if you can see, I'm pushing the fibre fill as much as anything all the way down into that corner, because now with that shell on top it will stay down better than it was before. So there's always a little bit of manipulating goes on with these pincushions. You've got to squidge them and plonk them and push them and pull them, and I think it's looking pretty good. So there's quite a whole lot more room in there again, so I can put a little bit more shell in the top. Oops. Hopefully most of it's going to go inside. There we go. And again, pushing down is good. Use the stick again just to help if you think it needs it. Even just sort of pouncing in it just helps it settle in a little bit better. And so there's more room again in there now. So I'm just going to put a little bit more in, not a lot more, because then I think we'll just put a little bit more fibre fill in at this end as well, because we want it to feel nice and full. So it's now sitting pretty well up to that ridge that we've created there. So I'm going to put some more of this in so that it looks like it's too full, because then we can push it down in with the other circle to flatten up this end. Just make sure that your threads that you're going to be tying up with are still there and available to you. And now I can put the circle in on top and push that fibre fill down underneath it, and that should keep all of the walnut shell inside with all of that going on. It's all looking pretty good. So now I can gather up my my threads here. Are not in this one? Maybe not. And so that's just all pulling up nice and firmly there. So just pull it in as tight as you can get it, because you don't want to leave anywhere for anything to escape or for anything to get into. So we're nearly done. And again, I'm just going to trim these off. I will come and put a little tiny dab of glue on those ends later. Nobody will be any the wiser. So now we just need to squidge it around a little bit till we're happy with how it's sitting. And it's all sitting pretty well, I think. A little bit of use. We could have a little rolling matches. But I think that's all looking pretty good. Doesn't matter whether you have it up that way or that way. So that was the cylinder roly-poly pincushion with those nice little gathered ends on it. I think that's kind of fun. Great place to stick pins in. You can't stick them in the top, of course, because the plastic's there, but you can have them sticking. You could put all sorts of fun shapes sticking out the sides. So that was pincushion number 16. Thank you, and I will be back with pincushion number 17.